Advanced Technology, and I have Justin Pacina as our
Hello.
CIO. And
Morning.
kind of helping us out, we have Megan, and works in our sales department, and Marianne, who is our training manager and creator of amazing content for our knowledge bases and a lot of stuff that can be super helpful in this kind of like new paradigm, new work that we live in, the world we live in.
Yeah.
So, over the past couple of days, we've been thinking about how best ways we can just get people working safely from home. Our fear as a IT provider is that we're going to have a massive outbreak of security issues based on the fact that people change their work environment, they're changing access rules. Everything's happening so quickly. No one's really doing any kind of analytics or review. There's no change control. So, one of the things we wanted to do as a team is to get out there and get some messaging and get some knowledge out on some best practices to secure your home. Not necessarily like deep dive how-tos, but kind of a broad base of what things that we think are so important that you can do now to get started. So we put a Microsoft form on our webpage. We got some questions in. We put a Facebook out there. Justin got some great responses from people we know.
I asked a bunch of my friends too. Yeah, and thanks
And
everybody who wrote anything in. A bunch of questions. I know a lot of them were duplicates, which is great. Which means a lot of people are asking and thinking the same things.
Same thing, Mary. I mean, so we got a lot of good. So what I'm going to do is I have a list here. I'm going to start reading out loud, and I'm just going to kind of get going. I don't know if you actually, Marianne, if you want to read the first question or something like that, maybe we're kind of doing it live. So.
Sure. So let's see. This is one of the first questions that we got that I also was, a little bit into. So what kind of antivirus can we use at home, and are there free ones?
Great question. I think Justin, as our CIO, has some good answers on that.
Sure, I'll go for that one. So I like ESET antivirus. That's what we use for our clients. That's what we use for our machines. That's what I use at home. It's not free. There's a pay version. The home version is relatively inexpensive. I think it's something like $50 or $60 for a machine for a year. That's a great one. If your machine came with a paid antivirus like Symantec or McAfee or one of those are also good. The kicker for all of these and really any antivirus is make sure you keep it up to date. The way that these programs work is by downloading what's called definitions, virus definitions. It's when the security researchers find and say, okay, this is a piece of malware. We're going to flag this as bad, then they publish that to the antivirus software to everybody who's paying for the subscription to get those. So any of those paid software that you have, keep them updated. There are other antivirus programs that work in a different way, but for most of the home ones, that's going to be the primary way that they work.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are ones there that do more heuristic-based, more sort of AI type, and a lot of the antivirus software is adding that layer into it. But those also work really well in a corporate environment because you can compare it against all the machines. If you have 50 machines in an office and you're all in the same network, you can compare traffic and compare data across them, and it works a lot better than you have one machine at home. Even those, though, you want to keep updated.
Correct.
If you don't want to spend money on it, on antivirus, if you have Windows 10, the best thing is the built-in Windows Defender. It's actually not bad. It's better than any of those other free ones because the other free ones, you don't really know where they're coming from, and some of them, while they're free antivirus, they sell your usage data, sometimes anonymized, sometimes not, and it's not really worth the risk. Again, with Windows antivirus, the best thing you could do with it is keep it updated, run updates, because Windows updates those definitions and keeps it going. So whichever antivirus you do use, whether it's a pay one or a free one, update, make sure they're up to date. That's the biggest thing.
Gotcha. It's a really good point. And I think that with that, it's for the low cost of having the antivirus, it's probably worth buying a paid version. But once again, if you have a lot of machines you have secure at home, definitely keep it up to date. So what's our next question? What do we got next?
Yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah.
I have a little question just honestly about setting up a good workspace. I didn't have like a desk before. I never work at home space, so I wanted tips and tricks from you guys about the best way for my tech to sort of interact with my home space and all that.
Yeah, that's a
I
tough
think
one.
I
Yeah.
think George, you're probably have a better setup than I do for that, since you work from home pretty regularly.
I do. So, once again, the space is being relative to what your home. Ideally, you'd have a separated space from the rest of your workspace. One thing that I found was that if you work remotely and you don't go to work, and you work where you eat, if you're working at your kitchen table, or if you're working at your dining room table, or you're working in your living room, or you're working in a bedroom, it's very hard mentally to separate your day from working from not working. It's kind of like, there's this misconception of getting out of bed in your pajamas and working, but I found, and I noticed many people who do this, that's like a really bad practice, because you have to kind of pretend, but you're not pretending. You actually are going to work. You should follow your morning routines. If it's like, I need coffee with my wife, or if I'm going to exercise, or if I'm going to get in a position just do the things you normally do. And in terms of setting the space up, you don't want to work with a laptop on your lap for any length of time. It's really bad for both your back, your neck, your carpal tunnel kind of thing. Ideally, I highly recommend a keyboard, mouse, monitor. One of the biggest things is sitting correctly and up and back, having kind of open chest, Alexander technique.
Posture while you're reminding me.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking at you, Justin.
Yep.
Yeah,
I got this.
Yeah, and so so much too is like looking at the, if you have video chat, not having the camera below you, because that kind of like illuminates your face from below, which is a unflattering angle for all of us in some level. Speaking for myself here. And
always up.
or up. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you want to do like those kind of like selfies like that, but you want to definitely have the camera in the right position. Ideally, you're sitting with the keyboard and mouse in front of you in the proper manner, and nothing. If you can set it up correctly, set it up as if it was your desk at work. That's the ideal place. And if and there's some great deals on Amazon for monitors. I mean, you can get a monitor for $90 on Amazon, and they're really good monitors. They're like some LGs, not even some like random brand. But singularly the most important thing is setting the space up: keyboard, mouse, monitor, especially if you have a laptop. What else, Justin? What are the two things really important?
I found what helps for me is big, thick books underneath my monitor and my laptop to raise them up. I just set up, before this, I didn't really work from home. I don't really like working from home. And part of that is there's only, one room in our apartment with a door, which is the bedroom, and I wasn't really set up. So when I knew I was going to be here for a while, I pulled out a card table and rearranged furniture and got myself set up in a little corner. And yeah, my monitor and my laptop I have raised up on the table, just with some big, thick books that I haven't been reading that now are being used as furniture. One of them is a Windows 2012 study guide, so that's how useful that one is.
That's a good one. I'm sure I have a couple. I'm
Yeah.
sure all of us have some kind of college textbooks floating around in there, like sociology. One, or
I think the other one is Anthology of American Literature. Yeah, so these are both.
Yeah, you haven't read that one either.
That one's not even mine.
I mean, even with all the time I have, I'm still not going to reread the Iliad or the Odyssey. So.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
The Joy of Cooking is very thick too, so I think
that works.
Oh yeah,
books are good.
Very good, very good. So, from Workspace, it's the same rules apply. One other thing that I would highly recommend everyone do, and this is highly controversial for some reason, I don't understand, is use a wired connection.
Yeah.
Connect your laptop or your workstation to your internet router or your router with a wire connection. It saves, it's much faster, much more reliable, and more secure. B, it saves airspace and bandwidth that's in the air, or radio waves, that sort of thing. And literally, it's like it changes the whole thing. When we're at Valiant, we fight this good fight for wired connections every day, telling people, hey, just plug in. We'll set up your workstation with a dock. All the things we got to do to kind of get people wired. but no, there's some great advantages of wireless, obviously moving around, that sort of thing. But for like video streams like this, chat, it makes a huge difference being a wire connection. Once again, Amazon has these great. I bought one over the weekend. They still have them. It was the greatest thing ever. It was a gigabit USB adapter with 3 USB ports. So not only was it a USB connection, but it was also a Ethernet adapter. So you can kind of solve both problems at once, and it works really well. So as we found in our house that the wireless definitely affects speed when we're doing these kind of like live streams or we're doing some kind of heavy duty. So
well, especially because everyone in the house is home, so it's not just you. Everyone's sharing. Streaming videos to entertain themselves, doing actual chats like this. It's a lot. So
exactly.
And even
plug in and get yourself prioritized.
Correct.
I did same thing. I bought a 100-foot cable from Best Buy. It was interesting. I was looking at it, and it was still when stores were still open. It was cheaper to buy the 100-foot online and have next day shipping than it was to go to the store and buy the 50-foot they had in stock. So I have a lot of extra cable, but it's enough to get my little desk area plugged in. And
that's right.
I mean, I have not terrible Wi-Fi at home. I actually run 2 Ubiquiti access points, which we don't really deploy for customers, but I mean, they're fine for home. And I noticed a difference between plugging in and not, that it just makes that much of a difference.
Yep. And once again, it's so easy. And most cable modems have a 4-port switch in the back. So do that. The other thing I always recommend is if you have certain people in your home, if you have kids in your house and you're using a Xbox or a PS4 or a Switch or any of those kind of things, many of them have Ethernet adapters built in, or you can buy them, once again, USB, very low cost. It makes a difference both from a gaming perspective. They get a little more frames. So hey, that could be helpful for the kids, for win. And it removes bandwidth from the wireless. So that's really important.
So. I think while we're on wireless, Marianne, I saw there were some questions about wireless that came in. Do you have one queued up, or am I jumping the gun?
No, you're good. That's my next one. One is just the best way to secure your Wi-Fi home network. I mean, some people immediately go, wait, is Wi-Fi as secure? And I'm doing all my work stuff on it. So
how much time have you got? That's really the question you got to ask. So this is a pretty complex question, actually, when you kind of unpack it, because it's about how secure Wi-Fi is, what's the best practices for Wi-Fi security overall. Should you separate traffic, separate your Wi-Fi networks from your home like your home personal use versus business use? But maybe Justin, you want to go through some best practices, and then we can kind of work our way backwards.
Yeah, so we'll start with the basic things you should do. First, definitely make sure that you have a password on your Wi-Fi, even if you're wired in, if you're wiring your work machine in. But if you have an open wireless network, anybody nearby can connect to the network, and once they're connected to the network, they can start looking at traffic that's coming in. Even more important if you are using wireless, if for whatever reason you can't plug in or you just don't have cable, or you just aren't going to, if you don't have a password on that, anybody nearby can connect to that network and then look at the traffic that's coming back and forth from your machine. Some of that traffic is encrypted just by the nature of internet traffic, but a lot of it isn't, and you just want to protect yourself from that. And even further into that, you're going to be sharing that Wi-Fi connection with anybody else that is using it. Like I said, the more people you have connected to your Wi-Fi, the slower it is for everybody. So you really do want to put a password on it. And that's not to say, if you're sharing it with your neighbor and you know that they're using it, you can share your password with them if you trust them. And then it's not like, kick everybody off and hoard it, but you don't want just active, open, broadcasting empty.
Right.
The next thing you want to do is make sure that you use, when you're doing a password, at this point, you really shouldn't have an option. It should default to what's called WPA2 as the setting. If for whatever reason it doesn't, you want to choose that. That's the more secure way to connect. Without getting super into details on how it works, it's an encrypted connection between each device and the the access point so that other devices on the network can't see that traffic, even though they're connected to the same network. And that's how you want to configure that. Uh, in terms of if you really want to get into network security from there, probably a little much to do for right now. But if you're thinking long term, you're going to work from home, and this is going to be more permanent than the next couple of months, you may want to look into things like getting a separate business line for your internet and setting up a private virtual net or a private network within your home just for your business use, just for your work use.
Right.
Uh, that can be with a small firewall like you would have in the office, or you could do it with a home router. It doesn't need to be fancy equipment either, but at that point, you're segmenting your work equipment from the rest of your network. And it, I mean, nowadays people have a lot of IoT devices, they have a lot of machines. George was mentioning gaming systems, all that stuff on the same network.
Right.
The thing that you want to protect yourself from is if any of those devices are compromised or not updated or have some kind of malware on it, you don't want there to be a path from that back to your work machine and then back to the office. So all the things that
Right.
you can do in between those to put like little stop gaps in between are gonna be there to protect you, gonna be
Right.
helpful.
Yeah, the idea is really to kind of the idea is to kind of like physically and logically segment off your works environment. You know, part of what our expectation in the future is that a lot of people are going to be not going back to an office after this. You know, so many jobs may be 100% remote or bulk remote. We don't know what is. We really don't know what the future holds.
Yeah.
But we do know that more people will be working remotely because of this kind of like grand experiment, and we have to rethink our what we think of as the security perimeter and what's our area of responsibility, both as a IT provider and as a
Mhm.
good citizen. Because if you get infection, you know, a malware in your computer or some back to your corporate network, the outcome could be even more dire than normally would have been. So
Mhm.
it's a really important WPA2, not a WPA and not the other encryption, WPA2,
Mhm.
SSIDs. There's some other things you can do to like hide SSIDs, that sort of thing, but I don't think you necessarily need to do that. So, yep.
I think I saw some questions too from a couple people about, and we kind of touched on it about VPN
Oh yeah.
and how what that protects you from and what that doesn't. Uh, the thing to keep in mind with that, as it relates to this especially, is that when you make a VPN connection back to the office, you're essentially the way I like to think of it is the virtual Ethernet cable, virtual cable plugging you in from where you are at home over the internet into the office. So the data that you send back and forth between that is protected and encrypted from anyone else on the internet. But what it does is opens up a connection between your home network and your office network. So that's where you really need to make sure that your machine is secure, that your network is secure, because there's potentially this connection back in to the protected network from where you are. And that is where a lot of these pieces come together as well, too.
So is it, I understand, Justin. I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you to explain it because you're a better explainer than I am. What are the two kinds of VPNs and how do they work in terms of like some basics of like things you should know? You know, IPsec versus SSL,
Mhm.
split tunnel
Yeah,
versus, you know,
sure.
full traffic.
So, yeah, we generally set up two types of VPN connections, IPsec tunnels or SSL tunnels, SSL VPN tunnels for the bulk of our clients. Everybody out there running Sonic walls, you'll know that between Global VPN and NetExtender.
Hmm.
The biggest difference between them is that NetExtender or SSL VPN tends to work on more devices. It's got a little more overhead, so it's a slower connection, but it's helpful to be able to put on different devices. It's easier. You usually go to a web page, log in, it can
Right.
run pretty lightweight. Whereas the global VPN or other clients like that will run at a different layer. They have usually use a pre-shared key in addition to your username and password when it gets set up. So it adds a security layer there, but it is not necessarily on everybody's machine. that'll run it, and definitely not
Right.
necessarily on mobile devices.
Right.
The other thing you mentioned was full tunnel versus split tunnel. The
Yeah.
idea with a full tunnel is I'm going to connect into the corporate network. I'm going to send all of my internet traffic, everything off of my computer that's going over the network is going to go over the tunnel. So if I'm going to watch Netflix on my machine while I'm connected, the connection goes from my machine to the office, then to Netflix, then from Netflix back to the office, back to my machine.
Right.
So don't do that.
Well, there's pros and cons for it. The pro for that is if your office has good gateway security and is running very tight security restrictions, some of our clients have that, then all that traffic going to Netflix while you're connected to the VPN goes through that filter. And that could be useful, and especially if you're running antivirus or anti-malware. The downside to that is all your traffic's going through the office. So it's going to be really slow,
Right.
and the office connection is going to be really slow, and everybody else that's using it's going to be really slow. So yeah, don't do that and then watch Netflix. Connect, do what you have to do, and disconnect.
Right.
The other way, split tunnel, the benefit to that is it's best of both worlds. It lets you connect out to the internet for anything that's the internet and only go over the tunnel for things that need to be over the tunnel. The downside to that is if your machine has some kind of malware or something on it, it's going to reach out over the internet and not go through the firewall, the company firewall, to filter it out. It's just going to go out to the internet, get it, do what it's going to do, and come back and have that connection back to the office. So
Right.
the same kind of best practices apply. Connect, get the files you need, connect to what you need to connect to, disconnect, and make sure your machine's up to date and protected.
Mhm.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Justin. That's super useful. What other questions you got, Marianne?
Oh, Marianne, I think you're muted. Or am I muted?
I don't think she's
I'm muted.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was unmuted and I clicked mute. Okay. Anyway, I think a big thing that comes up a lot is that people actually don't care as much about their security. They think, I'm a low rung on the ladder. I don't have any data that I would
Yeah.
want to steal. So I have a question here that's like, how much do I really need this, or where do I fall about how much I need this stuff? So
Ugh.
I know the answer, but you guys go ahead.
Should I start or should you start, Justin?
I don't know that the way I like to think of it is it's not people aren't out there planning big heists against your data. They're not, the Ocean's 11ing it and figuring
Right.
it out.
Right.
It's a parking lot. All your data is in your car in the parking lot. You should lock your doors, because what the hackers and bad actors are doing is not trying to figure out specifically how to get you. They're walking up and down the rows, checking every door, and if a door's unlocked, they're going to go see what they can get.
Mhm.
Right.
Maybe there's some change in there, maybe there isn't, maybe there's something good, maybe there's a radio, whatever. That's what they're going to do. And then the second piece of it is maybe you don't think you have anything, but you have a computer, and you can what bad actors will do is get on your machine, install malware on your machine, and then use your machine to do other things. And
Right.
sometimes it's innocuous enough, like mining Bitcoin. Okay, great. You're paying for the electricity and your computer's slowing down and they're getting
Right.
Bitcoin out of it.
Processing power and that
Oh,
stuff. Yeah.
But sometimes it's, actually running
DDoS.
right or
DDoS attacks. Just what that is a
Yeah.
distributed denial of service attack, where your machine and your internet connectivity is being used as an attack vector to a target, be it to take down a website, take down a network, and basically these bad actors are using these botnets in total to kind of like attack a target, and they're very hard to defeat because they're coming from so many different approaches. So you don't want to be part of that. Also, that's going to affect your productivity at work, at home, because now your internet connection is being hijacked functionally. I think another thing that's really important to keep in mind is, especially if you have some visibility out in the world as a business owner or a leader, or just anything like that, people are looking to attack you directly by direct phishing attacks. They call it whaling. It sounds fancier than it is. What it is that you're identified as a target, and and these bad actors find different methodologies to attack you via email, send you false email scams, all sorts of different things to do. Some of it's social networking, where it's phone calls. There's a bunch of different methodologies to do it, but the thing is, you have to be extra aware of it right now, because people are like seeking loan applications, government grants, or all sorts of stuff, and people are putting information in places that they normally would never put, like social security numbers, EINs, or any kind of like personal identification. Getting that stuff, putting that stuff, you gotta be really double careful and triple check where you're putting information. Remember, the government never calls you, ever. They don't call you. They send you registered mail. IRS, right? It's registered mail or registered mail. It's maybe that, or someone's knocking on your door and it's probably a police officer. So at that point, exactly.
We actually go over a lot of like how to spot phishing emails and even phone calls in our security best practices training. So I'm going to have that link come up, because we've got some videos online for that.
Super.
But very basically, for the question, one thing that I always tell people at the beginning why you're taking security training is, it doesn't matter if you have juicy, information to send. Even just your home computer has pictures of your friend's wedding that you don't want to lose. They're not going to use it. They're just going to make it so you can. And that's where ransomware comes in.
Yep.
So
it's very true. Exactly.
Even if you don't necessarily have what you might consider like pricey information, you have stuff that you still want, whether it's your work information or things like that people can prevent you from getting to. So
right. So it's very true. And as I said in the beginning, our fear is that this is going to get much worse over the next couple of weeks and months as time goes on and more people work remotely and things get more relaxed. Hopefully, we can stem that tide. That's the idea. So
yeah, definitely.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right. Was there? I think we still have some more time. Was there another question on the list?
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, yep. This one is, how often should I change my password? Which is good, because I've actually heard a lot of controversy about this, like the balance between, you should change your password because you don't know if it's compromised, but also if you change your password too often and you can't remember it, then you're going to start using simple passwords and get lazy. So yeah, let me know the answer to this one too. How often should I change my passwords?
So if you're using the password for more than one thing, you should change it right now. If you have one password for each thing, a unique password, you don't need to change it unless you get a notice that particular thing, service, whatever has been compromised, and you want to reset that password. The idea behind changing your password frequently was that people would use that password, the same password for everything. And it's like, okay, if that password's being used or gets compromised or somebody finds it out, then you want to change that so that they don't have it anymore. But really, the best thing to do is use some kind of password manager. I use LastPass at home just because I like it. There's a bunch of them. I mean, even there's ones built into the Chrome browser.
Right.
It's
and
better than
LastPass has a
nothing.
free version, right?
Yeah, there's a ton of and I think what was it, Dashlane? So there's a bunch of free ones out there. You definitely don't need to spend money on it, but just to have that tool, what it does is lets you create just a random unique password for every site that you go to, and when you go to log into that site, it plugs that password in, so you don't have to worry about memorizing all the random characters for it. And then you know that if that site gets compromised, the only thing that anybody has is that password. They don't have access to everything else. The danger of reusing passwords is everybody uses your email address as your username at this point, pretty much for everything. And if I use the same password on Facebook and LinkedIn as I do on the local delivery website where I order pizza, if that local website is not set up very well and somebody gets access to those passwords, well, now the first thing they're going to do is I'm going to log into LinkedIn with this, I'm going to log into Facebook with this, and if I use the same password, they have access to that. So more than changing passwords is making sure that they're all unique passwords.
Great. Well, I think I've been told to start wrapping up soon.
All right, then.
We plan on doing this session again on Wednesday at 10:30. just kind of a similar kind of format. More questions. I think. What was our? So I think we had more of a topical theme that day, right? Was that correct, Justin?
For Wednesday, I think Wednesday we're going to do more about collaboration, SharePoint,
Oh,
OneDrive,
right. That's
SharePoint
right.
and stuff.
Drive.
Actually, you just mentioned password manager. We're going to be talking a little bit more about multi-factor authentication and security and stuff like that on Friday.
Friday,
But
right.
Wednesday, we're going to be talking a little more about, Megan and I are going to be deep diving into SharePoint. If you have Google Drive questions too, we can totally answer that then. We're all collaboration and,
Right.
the best way to use the stuff that you already have and to have communication and to share files and not have to be like emailing back and forth and stuff.
Very good. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And
Thank you guys.
have a great day. Talk to you soon.
We'll see you
See you on
soon.
Wednesday. Bye now.
Take care. Bye.